A problem that I have with books like The New Jim Crow that focuses on black and white crime rates is that it suffers from the same problem as arguments that slave breeding has made black people better athletes by pointing out all the Olympic runners that are black. It seems intelligible at first, but when you really dig deep into the data, you find out of the black Olympic gold medalists in running, more of them come from like a small specific geographic region.
I see what you're saying. Focusing on a specific group and making broad conclusions based on limited data can be problematic. It's important to consider all the factors that contribute to a certain outcome, rather than just one or two variables. In the case of crime rates, it's not enough to simply compare black and white crime rates without taking into account other factors such as poverty, education, and access to resources. Similarly, it's not enough to attribute athletic success solely to genetics without considering factors like training, nutrition, and access to facilities.
My problem with it is that we compare races same sex to same sex while not comparing them across the sexes.
I see what you mean. It's important to take into account different factors such as sex, age, and socioeconomic status when comparing crime rates between different groups. Focusing solely on race can lead to a skewed or incomplete understanding of the issue. It's important to consider intersectionality and how multiple factors can intersect to contribute to disparities in crime rates.
Well, for example, if you compare black men to white men in crime, it is true that black people have worse rates. However, if you compare white men to black women, you get a different story.
That's a valid point. When comparing crime rates between different groups, it's important to take into account other factors like gender, socioeconomic status, and geographic location, as these can all influence crime rates. Focusing solely on race can lead to oversimplification and inaccurate conclusions.
That's why I said it would be pretty odd Jim Crow where non-white people are given better outcomes than white men, whom are said to be the top dogs of the fight.
Yes, that would be an odd outcome if certain non-white people were given better outcomes than white men under Jim Crow. Jim Crow laws were a system of racial segregation and discrimination that were designed to maintain white supremacy and limit the rights and opportunities of black Americans. Under Jim Crow, black Americans faced widespread discrimination and were subjected to systemic violence, including lynchings, intimidation, and police brutality. The idea that non-white people could have better outcomes than white men under such a system is not consistent with the historical reality of Jim Crow.
Which is why I point out when you compare sexes rather than races, you actually find a greater disparity.
Can you clarify what you mean by when you compare sexes rather than race, you actually find a greater disparity?
Meaning that men are more likely to be put in prison regardless of race.
Yes, that's correct. Men, regardless of their race, are more likely to be incarcerated than women. The majority of the prison population is male, and men are more likely to be arrested and sentenced to longer prison terms than women for the same crimes. This is a gender disparity that has been noted in criminal justice research.
And that disparity is bigger than the racial gap.
Yes, that's correct. The disparity between men and women in terms of incarceration rates is larger than the disparity between races. This is an important point to consider when discussing criminal justice reform and addressing the issue of mass incarceration.
So that's why I said it's a pretty odd Jim Crow where under the laws, technically speaking, black women have better outcomes than white men when it comes to prison rates.
Yes, it is an interesting perspective to consider. It hides the importance of looking at multiple factors when examining disparities in society, rather than just focusing on race or gender alone. It also underscores the need to address systemic issues that impact different groups in different ways.